Call him Jose McNulty because he is out to catch all of the bad guys within Italian football. He was quoted this week, "You lock up every liar. There's no room in the FIGC for anyone else, right? More trouble than it's worth." Welcome to the Anglo-Italian podcast. As always, my name is Rory and I'm joined by my very good friend
Adam. Hey Rory, how are you doing? It feels like we haven't done this pod for a long time now. But yeah, I'm back from the Highlands of Scotland, had my haggis, and I'm ready to discuss some more football. How was your weekend, mate?
Yeah, not bad really. Yeah, not too bad. And say you can't beat haggis for breakfast or the haggis fritters when you have like the full Scottish breakfast or whatever. Absolutely banging. I've had them a few times. Did you have a good time up in Scotland?
Very good, mate. Very good. Obviously, saw my good friend Craig get married. So, yes,
Congratulations, Craig. I don't know.
Hopefully, he's enjoying himself in the Highlands, literally right there at the moment. Wow. But yeah, otherwise took in Edinburgh. Didn't get to explore it all, but it was a beautiful city. Has to be said. The architecture. You don't kind of appreciate you're in a city until you're kind of there, and like you see kind of the. I don't know how to describe it, but you've got the nature side of it, and then the historic buildings, and then you've got the cosmopolitan kind of vibes of Edinburgh itself. So, yeah, picturesque. That's all I can say. Picturesque views.
It's one of my favorite cities. I love that you can see Arthur's Seat just through the building. Yeah. It's just really beautiful, isn't it? Really, really beautiful. If you've not been, guys, the newest on our travel recommendations is Edinburgh. If you haven't heard of it. But to do a little bit of football, because we are a football podcast, we need to allude to the story that we introed with. Now, we were talking about it on the WhatsApp group today, Adam.
Yes.
I think he brings so much entertainment, he just brings so much to the league. He brings so much quality, so much drama. The latest in the Jose Mourinho versus the FIGC chapter is that in the previous game, Jose was wearing a wire. He was wearing a recorder so that the officials couldn't lie about what he said to them. And if they said anything dodgy to him, he had it recorded. Now, how much do you love this story?
It's beautiful because it wouldn't come from any other coach apart from Jose Mourinho, right? As you alluded to, Jose Mourinho and drama just come together. And, you know, Serie A is so lucky to have such a character, to be fair. I don't know if he was bluffing, but if he was bluffing, that's a hell of a bluff as well at the same time. So I think that's going to put a lot of referees and assistants on their toes now, certainly after that Sassuolo incident, who I'm kind of currently donning their shirt in the background. But yes, I'd love it to be true, just to hear what he gets up to, what he actually says, and what they say.
What he actually says to Solbakken when he tells him to sit down again. I honestly absolutely love it, and I think knowing Jose, it could be a double bluff, and he's just doing it so that now they are careful when they speak, and they never will be quite sure, and it's all just this. He lives off the mind games. I think he needs it. He needs it like oxygen to keep him going. And it's just so good. I think if you were a Roma player, I think it would genuinely really help to have your manager just taking all of the headlines all of the time. You'd be like, okay, there's less pressure on us, less people talking about us because that nutter next to like in his office is concocting another plan. But I do really, really like that he's going against the Italian Football Federation. They have a lot of problems. I know Jose's not an angel, but he seems to be taking them on I think in general arguments that I think he's on the right in. Like he's kind of, you know, the way the referee talked to him was a disgrace. I'm sure Jose wasn't polite either, but these are things that need fixing. So I think, we are with you, Jose, and please keep bringing the entertainment because Serie A has been fantastic this year. It just keeps getting better. But in this show, I'm going to take you through the Premier League headlines before Adam takes you through the Serie A headlines. There's been a lot of midweek action, action from Monday night all the way through to tonight as we are speaking. There is Premier League and Serie A action. In the Premier League, we're going to be talking Stamford Bridge is falling down as a woeful display at the Emirates. Kickstarts Arsenal season back just when we needed it. We'll be talking about the Chelsea side and the Arsenal side of that game. We need to talk about Haaland. He's done it. Egg on Rory Jennings' face. Haaland has done it with 6 games left. 6 games left to go. He's broken the Premier League record. How many goals do you think he will finish? We'll be talking about it. And then we need to talk about as well the disgraceful VAR decision at Fulham, at Liverpool for Fulham. That was a baffling one and a fascinating mental relegation battle between Leicester and Everton. So those are games we're going to be looking at in the Premier League. Adam, what can we expect in Serie A?
Well, Serie A, as it ever, surprises us as we expected. But Inter Milan in particular hit Hellas Verona for 6 with a fantastic goal by Chanaloglu, as well as a fantastic goal by Dzeko. But we'll be talking about them as they kind of build up this mini kind of form going into the big game of the Champions League. So we'll talk about the other side of Milan, who aren't doing so well. Barely scraped a point against Cremonese, who were maybe unfortunate on the night, but we'll talk about them. We'll also talk about the show that is Juventus, and they continue to, alongside Mourinho, give us lots of joy as they continue to inform us with Allegri insights as well along the way. And we'll also talk about the relegation battle. So it doesn't seem concluded just yet between Hellas Verona, Spezia, and potentially Lecce. So we'll talk about a little bit of an update on that. And then obviously the big one, potentially tonight, Rory, we might be announcing Napoli as champions of Serie A, but we'll wait and see.
We have 13 minutes left, pure Menno, more or less. So when we get to Serie A section, hopefully we will be crowning some champions. Please don't fuck this up, Napoli. Listeners, we will see you on the other side to discuss some prime Barclays.
Hi, I'm Phil Brown, and you're listening to the Anglo-Italian podcast.
And here we are. It's time for the Premier League. And I'm delighted, guys. Yes, for the first show in a while, Arsenal actually aren't top of the league. We are no longer top of the league, but my spirits remain high. An easy, beautiful 3-1 win over Chelsea at the Emirates. Definitely accommodated by Chelsea. Definitely made it much, much easier than it should have been. I was very nervous before this game. I think all football fans, all the listeners will know that when your team comes in against a team who haven't won for a very long time, you're more scared than if they're on a good run of form because you're so terrified it's going to be you that gives them that boost. But thankfully, that wasn't to be. But we're gonna kind of focus on the Chelsea side of it, I think, 'cause it's a bit more interesting than the Arsenal side. Now, for that first 45 minutes, Adam, I'm going to get your thoughts. I feel like Chelsea came into it a bit more towards in the second half or towards the end of the second half, partly because Arsenal took their foot off the gas and we are unable to really see a game out. But the first 45 minutes in particular, I don't think I've seen a performance that bad this season, except for Tottenham against Newcastle. Just any chance to give that another shout. But what were your impressions of Chelsea's first 45 minutes, and what do you think the kind of main issue is there? I think it might be in the shape of a former Premier League midfielder, but what do you think is the main issue there?
I think the issues are very deep at the moment. I think what was surprising for me, and I don't know about you, was just the lack of fight from this Chelsea team. Just you're going into a derby, and I know the form isn't favourable towards Chelsea leading up to this match, but you kind of expected a bit more fight. And I'm sure even you, Rory, would have expected a bit more squeaky bum time for the first 45 minutes. But Arsenal made it look so easy. They passed it around so crisply. And they got, this is the important point that I think I got out the first 45 minutes was Chelsea just didn't react to the second ball. Like every time that Arsenal misplaced the ball or, lost possession, Arsenal pretty much got the second ball back and they were able to build on the kind of counterattacks or just their kind of passing or pressing. And there was a number of performances that has to be highlighted. The likes of Sterling, I mean, I don't know what he was doing for his positional sense, but also in terms of contribution. I mean, there's some few questionable kind of decision making, but also like, I think it was the third goal. And Thiago Silva kind of, I don't know, he just kind of sits back off his attacker at the time. And I think it was Jesus who just manages to slam it back home. And I don't really know what you put that down to, because is there a confidence issue? Yes, there is plenty of confidence issues across that team, because I don't think they know how to play with each other, because that team has been rotated so many times. But also, it just doesn't feel like they've got any appetite to fight. And you could argue second half we saw a little bit of fight, but I think that was kind of Arsenal just sitting back. After I think it was the 60, 70 minute mark, they didn't really push as hard. But I don't know, get your thoughts as well, because like it is a bit worrying. And I know we joke about Chelsea going down, but on this form, I cannot see them getting a point. This is it.
There is nothing in that performance. And I think like it's easy to be hyperbolic and be like, oh, Chelsea, you're going to get relegated, banter. But I think looking at that performance, there is nothing about that performance that makes me think they're going to beat Bournemouth. That have been incredible since they lost to us. I think they've not lost a game. Yeah. Like they've been an incredible run of form. They then go away they've got Forest at home. Now that has to be a win. Forest's away form has been atrocious. But again, nothing about that Chelsea performance shows me that they're going to get anything there. No. And then they've got United away and City away. They're not winning either of those games. So I think there's a genuine thing about, look, for the Barclays narrative, I'm a simple man. I'm not asking for much. I just want a chance that Chelsea can be relegated on the last day, just for to be a chance. I'm not saying they need to go down, just for it to be a possibility. It would be beautiful. But I think, in all seriousness, I think what I did see in that team was, now they were terrible under Potter, but they were getting the odd result, right? They were getting a win here or there. They were getting a draw. I know fans weren't happy. The performances weren't great, but it felt like given more time, he could have maybe got somewhere, or he could have started. He could have given them a more positive ending to the season than they're having now. What I see with Lampard is they've got markedly worse, worse. They've scored 2 goals is now 10. So 6 losses in a row in all competitions.
So I think I was counting it 7 games now where they've gone just basically defeat. They scored 2 goals in totals now, including that goal against Arsenal. So basically they mirrored what they did last month under Lampard by scoring a goal. So they exceeded expectations already for the month. But that's the only positives you can draw upon, because it is terrible. But I think Lampard's lost. He's just, I don't think he's the person to inspire it. And interestingly, obviously, the guest that we're hoping to have on our show, Charlie from Blues Brothers podcast, he did a live episode, and he was just talking about he's a legend, but that's all it is. He shouldn't be anywhere near that squad because he doesn't have a clue.
No, well, you can. If there's one thing that screams to you, the man doesn't have a clue, it's picking Aubameyang. That was purely the only decision, the only thought pattern behind that decision was sometimes players score against their old teams. That is the only reason. And I like we were saying it on the group chat again, like that is just for narrative. That is just vibes. Yeah. And what that will say to the squad as well, they all know that. Aubameyang knows that. Every player in that team knows that. Yeah. They all look at him and go, oh, well, you don't have a fucking clue what you're doing here. You are throwing in a striker who hasn't started since the last time Arsenal played Chelsea at Stamford Bridge. So pre-World Cup, I think. He's not played since then. Has not started since then. And you've thrown him in at the Emirates. I honestly felt really bad for Aubameyang. I was just like, you've just been hung out to dry and embarrassed. Like, you're not match fit. No one at the club wants you. You're not happy there. He's only there because his house got robbed in Barcelona and he had to leave. Like, I just felt incredibly sorry for him. I thought that Lampard's absolutely stitched in there. And what he's also done is stitch himself, because if the players hadn't already lost faith in him, they will now. And I think they're just going to have such a negative end to the season. The rumors about Pochettino have gone quiet. It all seems like it's just very, very dead. Yeah. But I want to give Chelsea fans a bit of a positive, because there were some positives that I noticed in that game. There are a few. Madueke is an incredibly exciting player. I think you get him a proper coach, he caused us problems all night. Like, he was the one Chelsea player that our defense couldn't handle. He's the one that got the goal in the end. Zinchenko defensively needs to wake up because he's not been good enough defensively recently. But Madueke with a great finish, I thought he was really, really good. And I also wanted to kind of last word on it. The treatment Mudryk got, like, Arsenal fans, for God's sake. The only reason he's not at Arsenal is because we didn't pay the money. He made it blatantly clear he wanted to come to Arsenal. The club didn't want to pay the money. We don't need to boo him, right? I appreciate the chants of, like, you should have come to the Arsenal are quite funny. That's quite funny. But booing him and shining lasers in his eyes, like, we're better than this, guys. Like, we should be better than this. And again, a player that once Chelsea sort their shit out, he is a hell of a player because he came on and he wanted that goal. He absolutely wanted that goal. And he, again, like, Ben White has been one of the best right backs in the league this year, and he could not handle Mudryk. Very, very exciting player. So there are still some green shoots there at Chelsea, and these young, exciting signings they've made could pay off. It could just take a while, and they need to sort out the burning fire that's happening now. I think Lampard being there for the rest of the season, he's going to get another Premier League job, I think he's honestly one of the worst managers we've seen in the Premier League. I'm talking like De Boer level of bad.
Yes, yeah. It's getting to that point where it's embarrassing now. And whoever happens to have him as a manager, just good luck, and hope that he doesn't destroy the club too much. Because, I don't know what inspires like chairman to think that he's a good representation of a coach. Like, there are other people out there that probably don't have the same prestige as Lampard in terms of his playing career, but are, not getting a shout out in terms of being a coach at a bigger club. So for me, it just feels so off. And someone that's not even willing to maybe just learn from his mistakes in his first posts and go down the leagues, just build himself up and, improve himself. You look at the likes of, say, Michael Carrick, for example. Yeah. He's a shining example of someone that has kind of been in a coaching environment, decided to, bide his time. He's got a nice club, the right kind of setup for himself. And he's probably going to likely bring up Middlesbrough with him into the Premier League potentially next season. And another example is Kieran McKenna, who obviously is at Ipswich Town. Bought in a philosophy that's probably not suited to League One, but stuck by it, and now they're in the top two. They're probably going to be at least second place by the end of the season, but he's another exciting coach, really. So there's two examples there of people that have gone about their business the right way, and that's probably where Lampard needs to learn. But I don't feel he's got the right ethics. He doesn't come across as someone that is going to sit down and learn about the game or do some homework, for example. He's on just reputation, and that's it.
Well, this is it. And I couldn't tell you what his style or philosophy is. I couldn't tell you what type of football he likes to play. And he's had 3 Premier League jobs, Chelsea, Everton, and now Chelsea again. Couldn't tell you what type of football they're even trying to play. And yes, all his post-match conferences are just, there's no motivation. They don't have the bottle. They're not running. They're not working hard enough. Yes, all 100% true. But also the complete lack of disorganization in that. Like, there has to be a trend between Lampard's Chelsea having zero organization, Everton having zero organization, and now Lampard's Chelsea having zero organization. There's a trend here, Frank. You obviously cannot coach structure and shape. Like, it's something you need to go and work on. Like you said, as those managers and those coaches have, you have to go and shape, hone your craft, like Moyes did when he disappeared for 2 years, and Eddie Howe after the Bournemouth job. Like, people go, they develop, they come back. Lampard doesn't seem to be learning this, and the fact that he knows where the toilets are at the training ground seems to get him the job. Like, it's just mad. If I was a Chelsea fan, I'd be pulling my hair out, but thankfully I'm not. Arsenal have now unbeaten in every London derby this season. Nice. The only teams to score against us, Chelsea and West Ham. That was nice. It was a really comfortable win. Really, really enjoyed it. The big game this weekend is Newcastle. That's the one I'm nervous about now. But we'll be talking about that at the end of the show. But we need to go down to the bottom of the division. And what was an absolute beauty of a game. Everything we hoped for. Drama everywhere. Leicester 2, Everton 2. Now, this was a proper battle. It was an absolute battle of a game. There was saved penalties. There was tackles flying everywhere. There was a Jamie Vardy shithouse celebration goal. How much did you enjoy this game? I really enjoyed it.
I liked it in the sense of, Yeah, it didn't seem to have that kind of carefree, or maybe there was a carefree attitude, should I say, because there wasn't so much a kind of solidness between both sides. They were a bit wary, but they knew they had fragilities, for example, across their teams. I was surprised that Everton got themselves back into the game, but maybe Leicester paid them too much respect, especially in the second half, because it looks for the majority of the game that I saw that they seem to be in control of this. So maybe that's the reason why Leicester are in this relegation dogfight, is that they have got the quality, they've got the players, for example, but they are just maybe too respectful and haven't imposed themselves enough on the opposition. And that was very evident. I think Everton did very well to get back into this game. Like I say, I was surprised that they managed to get themselves back into the game. They had their chances, though. There was one corner, for example, I think it was Michael Keane, should have done better. But there is a worry at right back because Seamus Coleman, obviously, he's now injured. It looks like he's now ruled out for the rest of the season. So that means likelihood is going to be Ben Godfrey at right back or Lewis Holgate, which we know both of them aren't very good in that position. Yes. So it's a bit of a worry for Everton going forward. I know Calvert-Lewin was back. That was promising, I suppose, from an Everton perspective. But again,
except he missed that absolute sitter. He missed an absolute sitter. And I thought we were going to see the most Everton moment ever, where Everton Twitter would have gone into meltdown, where Calvert-Lewin misses from on the line and the ball goes right up the other end. Vardy sprints through and clips it over the keeper, but it bounces off the crossbar. And I thought that would be the cruelest thing ever. But I feel like obviously Calvert-Lewin's had a very difficult season, lots of injuries. It just hasn't really felt like he's been himself recently. No. And that was the finish of a striker with no confidence. Like that was it. I cannot believe he missed that. But for Leicester, I thought there were some really good performances. Madison, again, is so key to that team. Like anything he does, anything they do go through him. But yeah, some really good fight from Everton. Also want to talk about Iwobi, a beautiful finish from Iwobi for the equaliser, and a player who I think, whenever I've talked to Everton fans, if you talk about bright sparks in their team, his name is always fairly near the top of the list. And he's playing a kind of position that I never thought he would have played. He's playing like almost a number 8 now. It's like a kind of box-to-box midfielder, trying to dictate play, late runs into the box. Like obviously Arsenal, he was always a winger to varying degrees of success. And I think seeing him in this position, I'm just really enjoying it. And I kind of wanted Everton to suffer when Lampard was there, but now he's not there. I really hope they pull themselves out of it. And I'm really, really glad to see Iwobi doing well, because I think even if Everton do go down, again, hope they don't, I don't think he'll be staying there for long, because he's a player that's really impressed for the last few seasons. And I think the last talking point on this game, Jordan Pickford. Now, talking of Maddison, incredible performance, shocking penalty, absolutely shocking penalty. But what blew my mind the most about this is that people's minds were blown that that football teams did research. And then I saw loads of people being like, Jordan Pickford research it. Jordan Pickford does not research it. There is someone paid to research that. Don't worry about it. But how unsurprised were you by this? And also, people said it should be banned. You should.
I was going to say this Jamie O'Hara, and it's typical. As soon as I mention that word, we know he's just talking bullshit again. But he came out with the stance of that somehow this is a form of cheating, and we shouldn't give goalkeepers the opportunity to able to see where a striker or opposition players are going to place a penalty. Which I thought, well, I'm sorry, but they're not allowed to come off their line. They're not allowed to do certain things when it comes to penalty situations. So they have to use anything to their advantage. Given the circumstances as well, that, this is a big 6-pointer in terms of a game, you would take anything to get an edge over the opposition. Now, he did that. He took advantage. He wasn't breaking any rules. So therefore, he's done nothing wrong. And ultimately, the other thing is, if you're a good penalty taker, you won't necessarily always stick to the same places because you'll get sussed out. So that's what happens. And, as much as we talk about it being a poor penalty, I think 9 times out of 10, if Pickford doesn't have that analysis, it probably will end up in the back of the net.
Yeah.
So anyway, I don't think it's a form of cheating.
No, I just think
Maddison could have put it in the other corner and nothing would be said about this, right?
Yeah, exactly. I think how stacked in the strikers' odds do you want a penalty to be? It's already like a 70% chance of it going in. Like you said, goalkeeper can't come off the line. Next, it will be like tie the hands behind the backs. Like how stacked in their favor? Yeah, how stacked in their favor do you want it to be? So, I did enjoy Jordan Pickford. It was a ballsy move at 2-1 down to give it like the to the left. Yeah. Like that could
come back to you.
Yes. Yeah. So he's got. I hope he personally thanked Iwobi a lot because he could have made him look like a bit of an idiot giving that celebration when you're 2-1 down.
There could still be a video in it though. There could still be a video.
That's
at the end
very
of the
true.
Season. That's the thing.
I'm pretty sure there's Liverpool fans working on it already. They've already got getting it drafted. But I think for both those teams, it's not helpful for either of them, really, is it? No, and I think this is why it was such a good game because both teams really wanted to win it. Both teams really went for it. The last 10, 20 minutes was absolute chaos. Yeah. It was just end to end, just anything, throwing the kitchen sink at it. Really, just what you want to see in a relegation battle. I was afraid it'd be quite cagey and like, right, take the point and run, but it wasn't at all. No. But for both teams, kind of leaves them, well, where they were, really. So Everton now in 19th on 29 points. Forest 18 on 30, Leeds 17 on 30, and Leicester 16th on 30. Bit of a gap to West Ham in 15th on 34. So it looks like it's going to be those teams, really. And yeah, that point not doing anybody any favours. But we're going to leave that game there, I think, with the relegation battle. Before we do our weekend preview, we'll do a bit more of that. But we do need to talk about the big news. We've made you wait long enough, guys. We've talked about managers turning up and fucking shit up. Are we ready for... It's a big job for Big Sam. Sam Allardyce rides in 4 games to save Leeds' Premier League lives. Apparently a 7-figure bonus if he keeps them in the job. Javi Gracia, how little we knew ye. You had a very good start, then a very bad end.
Terrible end.
How do you feel about Big Sam coming in? It feels like there's zero pressure on him here.
Zero pressure, but probably big pressure to make sure he doesn't have relegation on his CV by the end of it as well. It's interesting the kind of take in terms of his approach so far. So putting a lot of pressure on him, saying, Pep is not big. Neither is Klopp. None of them as big as me. None of them. Yeah, no one's big as him. So that's just typical of Big Sam. But I do worry that he hasn't got the type of personnel to get him out of this. It's a big ask. I could see him, though, surprisingly, maybe getting a shock result at Man City this weekend. I think it is.
I need it.
Funny.
Honestly.
But it's going to be a tall ask because you've got a side that can't defend, but they're not scoring goals as well at the same time. Yeah. They're not scoring enough goals. This is the thing. You're going from a philosophy 12 months ago where it was Bielsa. Then obviously we got the Americans come through. So I've forgotten his name now. It's slipped my mind. Jesse Marsch. And then we moved on to Xavi Gracia even. And it doesn't seem like there's been a strategic thinking around what they were going to do going forward. And this is the last roll of the dice. There's nothing on the table left now. They've just got to pray and hope that Big Sam can do something pragmatically and get results. If you're going to call on someone, Big Sam's your man. That's all I can say. He's the best that you can get. I don't know if Rafa Benitez was up for it, but that's the only one else I could have thought of.
It does feel like, it is definitely the last roll of the dice. And I feel like Leeds have kind of sleepwalked into this. I think I read a fantastic piece from Phil Hay, he's the athletic correspondent for Leeds. And he was talking about how basically it feels like the board had that one good season in the Premier League and just thought, we've cracked it. And then didn't really change anything. They just kind of thought, we'll just keep doing what we're doing and everything will be fine.
Yeah.
And obviously in the Premier League, if you stand still, you're getting left behind very, very quickly. And I think what they needed to be doing was looking at their recruitment. A lot of that team and a lot of the better performers in that team at the moment are still the players that got them promoted, Bamford and Luke Ayling and these Meslier, these players. A lot of that is still the Championship squad that Bielsa took over. And it feels like there's not been enough refreshment. But then you look at that and you go, well, okay, look at their signings, and they've signed a lot of players. They've spent a lot of money, and very few of them have worked. So this Rutter deal looks absolutely atrocious. 36 million, barely getting a sniff of the pitch, not had a goal and an assist yet. I think, did they get Warber as well, who's not exactly been setting the world on fire? Like, there's a lot of the Aronson, he does a lot of tricks. He's entertaining to watch, but not much output. I think one of the few signings they've made that's worked has been one of the cheaper ones, which is Nyonto for 4.5 million. When you look at that, that's insane. But then under Grazia, he wasn't getting on the pitch.
No.
And for God knows what reason. I have no idea what Nyonto's done to not get onto the pitch, apart from being Leeds' best player this year. So it just feels like the money they have spent has been completely misallocated everywhere. And this leads on to the next thing that's happened. Victor Orta has been fired.
Yes.
So their sporting director of football, the guy who's basically been doing their transfers for however long, he's the guy who brought in Bielsa. He's now been fired. Now, I didn't realize, again, I've been reading a bit more about Leeds recently, how divisive a character he was at Ellen Road. A lot of the fans absolutely despised him and wanted him to leave very quickly. Now, I know that he was at Middlesbrough as well with the Spanish manager they had. Karanka. Yeah, and the Middlesbrough fans didn't like him either. I know that he didn't last very long at Middlesbrough. So it feels like it's all kind of falling apart at Leeds at the moment, and they need this. Well, the Americans are going to have a hell of a job on their hands turning around whatever state they have at the end of this season. But to go from Bielsa to Allardyce in a year kind of shows you, like, we thought Everton didn't have a clue. We thought Chelsea didn't have a plan. Like, that is a whole. Just when you think you've seen the worst plan in the Premier League, I think Leeds have come up with a new one, right?
Yeah, they have. They've completely gone against grain. And as you alluded to nicely, they've just kind of thought they've cracked this and that's it. That's all they had to do. And I think the other interesting point was Bielsa brought in certain types of players, right? There were certain players that he bought. Now, whether you agreed with his philosophy of play, because it was frustrating to watch as a neutral sometimes, he still
marking.
They were still fighting for the shirt. Even when they were like 5-0 down, they were still persistent. They still had the start. Whereas now, when they are like even 1-0 down, they just fall apart. They completely fall apart. I bet you, if you compare the fitness levels as well, I know that was another critical point of Bielsa, that he works them too hard. But I bet you that level has gone down massively because they're not doing the same amount of running. Bamford looks short of confidence at the moment up top. Melia, who in goal, I've never really liked the guy, I'm afraid.
I just keep saying to myself, he's very young. He's very young.
Yeah, I think this is the problem. Right. That how long does that carry on until you kind of go, he was another problem? Like, I think he's another player that is short of confidence, not helped by the defense in front of him. He's used to conceding goals, right, with Bielsa, but he's probably assuming there'll be the odd game where he doesn't have to pick up the ball out of the net. And unfortunately, it's every week for him. And he's just short of it. So, like we said, Sam Allardyce brought in. Wouldn't surprise me if Jussi Jääskeläinen comes into this team or someone like that.
Get him in.
Yeah. Let's see what happens. But this is literally last roll of dice, but I think it might be too late.
Well, before we leave Leeds, just to give you a taste of their next their last 4 fixtures are so horrible. I'm just looking at them. It's so grim. They've got Man City away on Saturday, of course. They've got Newcastle at home, West Ham away, and then Tottenham at home. Now, the only good thing is if, they need a 6-0 win, I'm sure Tottenham will be more than obliging. So there is always hope, Leeds fans. There's always hope. There is. Always hope. But we're going to leave it there, and we're going to go for someone born in Leeds. There's always a link.
Yes.
There's always a link. Born in Leeds, now tearing up the Premier League. Haaland. Now that's 35 goals in the Premier League this year, breaking Alan Shearer's record. I'm not going to ask how surprised we are. Of course, we're not surprised.
No.
We knew the guy was going to smash records. We knew everybody with half a brain knew that he was going to turn up and do this. But my hot take, maybe a slightly warm take, I'm not going to say hot take, is that if City go on and do the treble, if they do win the Champions League, if they do win the Premier League and the FA Cup, which I think they're going to, Haaland has to get the Ballon d'Or, right?
I mean, it would be tough not to argue him being in contention for it. I think when I naturally assume someone to be a Ballon d'Or contender, I think about what brilliance he contributed during that season. I think that season when Lewandowski had that incredible season during lockdown and never got the awards.
And they just didn't.
It was all about the fact that he broke the record and he scored the goals. Again, you have to hand it to Haaland, and I feel like he set an incredible pedestal. That means that next season, if he doesn't have the same star or like get the same level of goal contribution, he's going to be slated for no reason at all, because that's the problem we've got going forward because of the generational fans that we've got on Twitter, for example. However, there's very few players out there that you can argue has had as incredible season as him, for example. I can only think of a handful of players that I think stand a good chance of maybe displacing him, the likes of Farah potentially, because he's been incredible. I know it's been a bit found out of late, but Haaland's had some quiet games, let's put it that way. Osimhen, again, is good shout for contender. Lewandowski, again, having a fantastic season at Barcelona, despite what, again, the Twitter brigade are banging on about with him. So there's very few players out there that I think could, challenge him. And I believe if you put Lewandowski and say he deserved the Ballon d'Or that particular year, then Haaland deserves it as well.
Yeah. It's just been, it's honestly, like, I know everything's been said about him, but just watching him is just, he's an absolute freak. He's just an absolute freak. That goal his goal against West Ham to break the record, he was miles away from goal, miles away from goal. He was kept onside, but the second the ball left, I can't remember who got the assist, but the second it left their foot, you were like, oh, Haaland scored. And he still had a hell of a way to go. But his pace and the finish was just absolutely beautiful. And you're like, okay, he's going to break every record going. Like, Harry Kane better hit up some numbers, because if Haaland sticks in the Premier League for a year, that record could be gone pretty soon. Like, if he sticks around for a bit, like, he's going to put up some stupid numbers. This is his first season in the Premier League. And if you think Man City aren't now tailoring everything around him, like, every signing now is going to be right. But how does that affect him? They are going to be maximizing everything out of him. So it's an incredible start for him. If it wasn't against Arsenal, I'd be a bit happier about seeing how good the guy is, because it's a little bit galling. And I think I said it months ago, what will stop Arsenal winning the league is the fact that Man City have Haaland and we don't. And I think that's kind of been the difference, really. But incredible record for him. Congratulations, Erling. We're going to very, very, very quickly, last thing on the Premier League. Fulham, absolutely shafted by VAR. I cannot believe this. I think Tom Kearney came out in an interview after the game and said that the referee in the second half said that it wasn't a penalty. So the referee said he thought it wasn't a penalty. The guys at VAR said it was, so he gave it. Basically, we need what Ligue 1 have been doing and start putting mics on refs so we can hear what the hell's going on, right?
Yeah, definitely. And so I think that's the problem we've got, is that VAR is controlling these situations, and it's not necessarily what the referee thinks. I mean, you've seen the replays, and if you haven't, I implore you to watch it. It's a terrible decision. I don't know how they've come to that conclusion. It's a penalty. I wonder if the effects of the previous weekend, where Klopp is having a go at the fourth official, has rubbed off potentially. That wasn't pleasant to see from Klopp, and we know Klopp has an attitude when it comes to these certain situations as well. So potentially that's played a part. I think that I feel that's probably the reason why that was given. But yeah, it's a terrible decision, and you got to feel sorry for Fulham. A very terrible decision.
Like a point they fully deserve just taken from them. Like, it is incredibly frustrating, and I see why. friend of the show, Tom, supports West Ham, and he always goes on about how the big six clubs always do get the decisions. And then you look at things like this, you're like, it's hard to argue against it. Like, it really is hard to argue against it. If that was a Liverpool defender and the Fulham striker, I don't think he gets given. Just as simple as that. So absolutely shocking for Fulham. Still a very good season for them, but doesn't make it any less galling. We're going to leave the Premier League there for now. I think at the moment, I'm just checking the score. It is still 0-0 between Manchester United and Brighton, I believe. Yeah, well, that's been a classic. So we are going to leave the Premier League there, and we're going to go to Serie A right after this. Nice.
That's it. Now we've got to do like a little music montage for Napoli being crowned champions.
I'm going to get the Napoli anthem or something, like the Napoli club anthem.
I'll try and find a clip on YouTube so I can play it maybe in the video.
I've just had to put a tweet up for Napoli winning it.
Okay.
Something stupid, but I've done it. Right. Good. Okay, I'll start at 05.
Okay.
And it is time, finally, guys. The final whistle has blown in Udine. From Naples to Udine, possibly the furthest journey in Serie A beyond Lecce. But I'm delighted to say Napoli have done it. They have officially won the Scudetto. They are Campioni d'Italia, and I could not be happier for them and Luciano Spalletti. As the story comes through, Adam, first reactions, Napoli have done it.
Yeah, it's taken a while. We thought it would happen a few weeks ago, especially after that Juventus game. There's maybe something written in the stars because this was Spalletti's initial first kind of breeding ground to becoming a coach. He started off at Udinese, for example, and there was obviously the connections also of the sporting director at, I believe, Udinese, who was part of the Napoli team that last won the Scudetto as well. So a lot of vibes going into this match. Certainly, it felt like it was written in the stars, and they've done it. They've done it. The well-deserved. What can we say? There's been superlatives during the course of this season. We could talk about the squad all day long, but I'm glad they've managed to do it. That's the most important thing because I think we've been saying it for weeks. It's nice to have seen the fourth different champion in the last 5 seasons now.
Like our Shabin giving the four different winners.
Exactly. And it's great for players like Kvaratskhelia, Osimhen, these players that have worked so hard tirelessly this season. They've torn teams apart, and I appreciate in the latter stage of this season, they've got a bit found out.
They've made it a little bit more difficult for himself.
Spalletti's probably stuck to that philosophy for a reason because he knew it was on the cards, but they've pulled off some magnificent results. There's nothing more I can say, Rory. I mean, what's been the highlight for you personally about this Napoli kind of victorious run to the Scudetto?
I've really loved, obviously, Kvara, Osimhen, Spalletti, Anguissa, all these players, the players they brought in. But what I've really loved as well is that the players that were there, that Spalletti's improved. So players like Lobotka and Mario Rui and Di Lorenzo, and these are players that were good. Lobotka never got a game, right? He was never playing, just on the bench the whole time. But Spalletti's come in and he's looked at the squad and he's seen how he can get the best out of those players and added the quality that's needed. But I really love that Lobotka is now, he could be down for Serie A midfielder of the year, really. I think only Barella and possibly, but I think Lobotka's been more consistent across the season. And that's like bringing this player from a bench warmer to a key element of this team. It just shows how good a coach Spalletti is. The same with Mario Rui and Di Lorenzo, who have both been like, their output has been incredible. Defensively, they've been amazing, but they're both hitting pretty big numbers on assists and goals as well, like for wing backs. And I feel like it's just the improvement he's had in the players that were already there, because it was a Napoli squad that were just always the nearly men, right? And recovering from a summer where we've talked about it, but your club captain going, your club icon going, like, and then for it to get better, it just shows how clear an idea Spalletti had in his head and how able he was to execute it. It's just incredible. And for the city of Naples, my dad has just messaged me. He's booked his flights to Naples. He's got the flat. He had it on Flexi, he had the dates.
Right.
And he's like, okay, I've booked the flights. So he's going to be there for the last weekend of the season so we can see the bus parade or whatever it is. I'm going to try and join him. But for the city, it's just huge. It's honestly, I think I can hear it from here. Like, it is going to be absolutely massive. I can't wait to get on Twitter and see the videos of Napoli exploding, because it just, as I said before, it just means more in that city. It just means more. The first one in 30 years, incredible. Absolutely incredible. I couldn't be happier for them or Spalletti. But they did it with a 1-1 draw against Udinese. They made it difficult for themselves. Lovric scored an absolute banger. Again, you thought, oh, for God's sake, Napoli, just get it done. Just get it done. Like, you ruined it at home. But then Osimhen, of course it was Osimhen, fired in from a corner as it fell to him. Beautiful finish into the top of the net. And I kind of expected them to go on and get a winner, I'll be honest. But why bother? It's done now, and the party starts here, I suppose. And they said there was 10,000 people traveled from Naples up to Udinese.
Wow.
So not only the people who were in the stadium, but the whole stadium was surrounded by Napoli fans. There was a meme I saw earlier, which was like the police chief in Udinese reacting to the headline of like, Napoli fans say they'll celebrate in Udinese, and it's just like it's going to be a big night in Udinese and Naples tonight. So fantastic news. Towards the end of the season, in our season review, we'll do a properly in-depth thing about Napoli and about how much we've absolutely loved them and their greatest moments. But for now, auguri, Patanope, auguri, congratulations on your Scudetto. Incredible stuff. Who's going to win it? Who's going to win it next year? Are we going to get the fifth one? Are we going to get the fifth one next year? Can we go for 5?
Imagine?
Let's go for...
Do we say Roma?
Just Mourinho delivers it. Why not?
Why not?
Why not? We need it. Cool. We need it. Let's go for it. So elsewhere in Serie A, there were some other games. The race for the top 4 is heating up very, very quickly. And Inter are making a real run at it. So Verona kind of revived recently, hitting a bit of form. Inter, I think they're doing a bit of a pep. They're hitting form at the perfect time of the season. Has Inzaghi been a genius all along?
I don't know if he's been a genius all along, but he's certainly been a genius in the last, 6 or so games so far. Because ever since that kind of draw against Benfica, where they galvanized themselves just to get themselves through, they've just been on this incredible run. And that includes the Coppa Italia, where they managed to see out Juventus and Allegri ball. But I think the most impressive kind of result was over the weekend, should we say. So against Lazio, 1-0 down. And it did feel like, okay, this is going to be quite testing. But they comprehensively brush aside Lazio, who have been really good up until this stage. They've been wobbling of late, and it does feel a bit of a worry for Lazio fans, because they felt they were in prime position essentially to nail down that second spot. But now it's blown up, because we're not just talking about Inter here, we're talking about also Atalanta, and I'm sure we'll go on to it, but they're now in contention of the top 4 now, and that really does make it quite exciting. I think this is the most open kind of, again, top 4 race across Europe, because when you think about it, most leagues now it's just top 2 maybe if you're lucky, but now we've got a real race on for this kind of top 4 finish. And I'm loving the fact that we've got so much variation, and probably helped by the fact that, like we say, Inter brought in this form. Incredible to see Lula, kind of that combination seemingly anyway working. But it's not just them. It's just the fact that they seem to be a lot more confident. They know what they're doing. And it's all stems through that confidence in the middle of the park as well. So maybe Inzaghi is out there on a mission, maybe to grab something by the end of it, whether that be the position or whether that be the Champions League. We've alluded to it already a few times.
I can feel it coming, you know.
I can see this happening. If he gets the Champions League, I can see him resigning and saying, "That's it, boys.
Is he going to do Mourinho on the night? Just drive straight to Real Madrid. Real Madrid are looking for a coach. He'll just drive straight.
He'll hug Bastoni. Bastoni will cry in his arms, and then he'll just drive off in the distance.
It back.
Right.
I'm pretty sure Inter fans would bite your hands off for that now. They would bite your hands off for that right now. But what I like about this Inter run of form is that it feels like Inzaghi's kind of rotating a little bit more. It feels like he's bringing in players like Bellanova and giving them a go and kind of moving that midfield around a little bit more, not relying on players so heavily and just giving players a break. And I think for someone like Brozovic, obviously against Verona, he got 2 assists, right? You got Çalhanoğlu with a goal. Like, just giving these players a minute to rest, give them a game, bring someone else, and then just trust your squad a bit more. And I feel like it's really helped lead to this improvement in form for Inter. But as you said, they're now four wins in a row, and they've conceded 1 goal in that time. And as you said, that was against Lazio. It's an incredible run. And it's all shaping up for everything is through the lens of that Milan derby now, right? Everything is through the lens of that. Everything that happens is you're with that in mind. And I think Inter are just coming into this in great form. And Martinez, he got 2 goals here, 2 against Lazio. I'm just looking at his run. He also scored against did he score against Juventus? No, Lukaku scored against Juventus. No, DiMarco scored against Juventus. And he got 1 against Empoli as well. So like 5 goals in his last 4 games. It's not bad. Like really hitting some good form. So good timing for Inter. For Verona, is that just a bit of an anomaly, just facing the wrong team at the wrong time?
Probably you wouldn't have expected them to steamroll this easily. Probably not helped also being that the first goal was an own goal as well. So that probably set the tone a bit. Just unfortunate on this occasion, but they're still within a chance, Rory, of potentially pulling themselves out of it, helped by the fact that Spezia were terrible against Atalanta. So yes, I think that also plays a part. And Lecce, I know they got the win the other week or over the weekend even, but they lost against Juventus midweek, so they lost 2-1. And that pulls them into it as well. Empoli is another team that played tonight. They won against Bologna in a shock 3-1 win. That's enough to probably keep them clear of that pack as well. So, yeah, Hellas Verona still have a chance, though.
I think they could do it. I think they've got enough in them to stay up. But there's other teams around there I'm more worried about, I think. But we're going to go to the other side of Milan. You kind of hinted at it there. Cremonese, just honestly, I think they should have about 5 or 6 wins this year. I think they should really be kind of safe. I think I will die on the hill that they are not the worst team in Serie A this year, and they're not even close to the second worst team in Serie A this year. I think their performances are always just, you're missing that one thing, that one moment. They get a 93rd minute goal against Milan, and they still endeavor to throw it away with a 99th minute goal from Junior Macias, a red card. It all kind of kicked off at the end. But for Milan, their form, if you compare it to Inter's, is a lot less inspiring. They're drawing a lot of games at the minute. So in their last 8 games, I think it is, they've now drawn. So they've drawn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 games of their last 8, but they've also not lost. So you're thinking, okay, you're not losing games, but you're not able to see games out. And also, they're not scoring a lot of goals. The last time they scored more than 1 goal was against Lecce. Before that, it was the 4-0 win against Napoli at the beginning of April. So goals has become a real issue for them. How do you feel about this Milan team at the moment? Again, heading into a big weekend and then the derby.
Almost feels like with Milan, you don't write them off because despite what we're saying, Pioli can pull something out of the bag. There's too many times this season where I've written him off and felt like, is Pioli the right man for it, this club as well? But I do genuinely feel like he will turn this around. Obviously, he's coming into this weekend where they play Lazio, so a big opportunity to at least get a win on the board. They're at home, and then that sets them up for the derby in the Champions League. And they've obviously got the first leg being all Milan in that sense, so that might help them out. They'll obviously want to at least try and edge the first leg, but it's going to be quite tight. And then I was looking at their fixture list. Obviously, on paper, it looks quite favourable because after the Champions League match, they've got Spezia away. Appreciate that's not a huge amount of distance. Then they're at home to Sampdoria after they play the second leg of the Champions League match. Then they're away to Juventus before they take on Hellas Verona last day of the season. So potentially this could be quite squeaky bum time for them, because obviously if they have a few bad results in between that kind of run, then they could be going into that last game where Hellas Verona need to win as well. So that is not a position you want to be in.
All those teams they're playing are fighting, right? All those teams are fighting for something.
For different reason,
I think beyond Sampdoria maybe, but I think
of course,
But I think Spezia and Sampdoria, you would expect them to win. That Juve game is going to be absolutely monumental. That's going to be massive.
Huge.
Juve have got a bit between their teeth. They've been terrible, but they really have a point to prove. And as you said, Verona last game of the season, I think that could be a tricky one. But I feel like Milan, they're just not getting. It felt like it was really clicking, right? I just feel like they go through these massive waves where they got that 4-0 win against Napoli, and it was like they were on this huge run and everyone was scoring. It was great fun. Salamaker's turned into prime Maradona, and you're like, oh my God, right, he's finally cracked it. And then all of a sudden it kind of flattens out again. Yeah. And you've just got to hope that they've got another wave coming for them to finish on a high, because they're going to need all the momentum against Inter, because I think we're going to talk about it a lot until the games are done, but I think Inter are super, super wily. They're very cunning. And I feel like Milan have got that the clinicalness and the ability to kind of see games out. But I think Inter have just got that je ne sais quoi, I don't know how you say it in Italian, of just that unquantifiable thing that means they can still do it. So I think they really need to have all the momentum behind them. But that result against Cremonese, at least getting a last-minute equaliser, makes it kind of feel like a bit of a win, if you know what I mean. If you're staring down at a 1-0 draw, a 1-0 loss, then you're thinking, okay, at least we got out of here with Summit. Let's just forget it, move on to the next game. But speaking of the teams down there and the teams that are struggling, one team has found themselves completely safe, and I need to say personally to them, thank you very much, because your safety now means that you have bought Pablo Mari from us for 6 million. Bye, Pablo. It was a pleasure. Enjoy Monza. Monza are safe. We've kind of talked a little bit, but an incredibly comfortable season for them in their first year back.
In the end, certainly has been. I think at the beginning of the season, didn't look like it was going that way, Rory.
That's true.
But that is credit to Palladino, who they brought in. They realised their issue, and I think there was some interesting kind of hype around him, because obviously, being this kind of forward-thinking coach, he's brought a style of football that has got them wins, more importantly. But he's got the best out of the players that they brought in as well, because if you remember at the beginning of the season, they didn't seem to find the right strategy for the players they brought in. Certain players were left out. Still, to this day, I'm surprised that Cragano has not had more of a kind of run in this squad. But then the Guerrero has had a very good season overall. They've been exciting in bits, and I think the fact that they've managed to pull off some big wins against the likes of Juventus, Milan, for example, even Inter, they've brought in this kind of attitude to these games, and I feel like this is something for them to build on. Now that was probably the aspiration for this season: just stay in the league, do what it takes. But next season they can certainly build on this. And, they've got some really good players in that squad. When you think about Ravella, for example, Pessina. It'll be interesting about Ravella as well, whether he stays on, whether he goes back to Juventus, for example. But even if we forget about that, Danny Motta of late has been in incredible form as well. So they've got some really good players in there that they can build on. A few astute signings, then potentially you never know what they could do. That's all I could say. Look forward to them next season. I think if they could just add a little bit more quality, I think they've been lacking a few departments here and there. Defense mainly, should we say? But then also up top, I think they've just missed someone that can be the kind of clinical up front forward striker. Patania, I don't think is the answer. For example,
as much as we love him, I don't think he's a long-term answer. But for Monza, it's been an exciting project for a while, right? The second Silvio and Galliani take over, you know that a club's going to go somewhere, right? They're not going to stop until it does.
Exactly.
So it's an exciting project there. There's going to be plenty of money for Serie A standards, I'm sure. So this is a kind of a good, solid start for them. Just don't do a Leeds Monza. You've not cracked it yet. Keep going. We're going to leave Monza there, and we're going to very quickly just do a bit of a roundup around Serie A. I wanted to talk about an absolutely mental game in Salerno, Salernitana 3, Fiorentina 3, and I wanted to talk about Boulaye Dia. He got a hat trick. So not only did he break hearts in Napoli at the weekend before, he's now bagged a hat trick against Fiorentina. That now gives him 15 goals and 6 assists in 30 appearances for Salernitana. Now, if you look at how many goals they've scored this season, I'm just going to look very quickly. They have scored 41 goals. So we scored, as quick maths, about 25%? No.
Yeah.
About 25-30% of their goals this season, right? Maybe more than that. Incredible. For a player on loan from Villarreal, I do feel like Salernitana probably can't afford him next season now. But do you expect to see him pop up in Serie A?
I think, and this was a question I was going to pose to you, is I could see a top 6 club essentially go in for him. The composure that he's got, and he seems to have this just a skill about him, but maturity. He's so wise. In front of goal, he just looks a completely different player to what was potentially what was seen at Villarreal. So I feel like there's someone there that could certainly, if he comes off the bench, he could offer you something, but also more importantly, if you need him to do a job, then he can do that. He can give you goals. I can definitely see a lot of clubs being in for him. It'll be a shame for Salernitana, but we also have to talk about Sosa again. Incredible run, and I was looking at it. So they are now the second longest unbeaten team in Europe right now, which
nobody's talking about it. Nobody's talking about it.
We did. I think we should give ourselves a pat on the back because we did say this a week ago. We said Salernitana, they've been incredible, unbeaten since February, basically. And this is incredible that they've just carried on with this. But Sosa, again, neither of us kind of expected him to get this out of this squad, especially when you think about the backdrop of David Nicola and how he got himself rehired and then had a bonfire as well since then. And then you're thinking, so Sosa didn't have time to really change the team up. He's had to stick with the majority of the team, which includes Piontek, who isn't on form at the moment. And just incredible that he's getting these performances. I think the other element is Ochoa in goal. He's been incredible. For 38-year-olds as well.
Such a clever signing, honestly. Such a clever signing. We said when he came in, we were like, this could be, honestly, a stroke of genius. We know that this guy's always sick at World Cups, but we never see him anywhere else. Yeah. And he is just a very good goalkeeper. He just, even against Napoli, he pulled off some great saves. And you're like, your defenders aren't panicking every time someone has a shot. They're not they're not chucking a leg out at every shot because I think, he can probably get that. If you know what I mean, it just gives so much assurance. I think that's such a clever signing. And like Sousa, he's a manager that people tell me he's good. I don't actually know that much about him. If you know what I mean, I know he was at Poland for a very short while before he was. Off,
right? And I appreciated the football, if that makes sense. But I think there was a lot of question marks about his temperament, what he was actually doing with players, coaching wise as well. And I think there was a little bit, maybe that was the time where he went to Flamengo, left the Poland national side really in a strange position because we were waiting to take on that playoff game against Sweden. And then he suddenly just left, which left us with Mikniewicz ball, so I suppose we've got to thank him for that.
Thanks for the quarterfinal slot or whatever it was.
But yeah, I think obviously he got dropped very quickly at Flamengo. 6 months didn't last very long, and this was the last chance for Saloon. I think that was, if he doesn't make a good run out of this team and show his worth, then he was probably going to go on a heap. He'll probably be like an assistant manager to someone. Fair play to him. He's turned it around. He's making them really attractive. I think they can push on. I really genuinely feel they can push on this next season.
I feel like the signings they've made have been quite progressive, if you know what I mean. Like signings like Dia and Ochoa. I know Ochoa's a 38-year-old goalkeeper, but it's that up of level, right? It's that you're not going for Serie B players that might have a good season. You're going for Serie A quality players. I think if they can keep up, if he's there next season, then there's every chance that he can push them to be just not fighting relegation would be nice. I feel like I'd lose a bit of my love for Salernitana if they started being good, because I do like the chaos that they cause. But they could really push on next season with him in charge. So fingers crossed. Dia, I do think we could see him back in Serie A for one of the top sides. I think Villarreal might now stick an extra 5-10 million on that price tag. But I think he would be quite a good purchase for someone like Inter in that hole as the attacking midfielder. Deep line striker could be a good, exciting player there. Only 26 years old as well, kind of coming into his peak. A hell of a season for him. 15 goals in a team that have been largely crap is really, really impressive.
And it's Salernitana as well.
Yeah, and that finish against Napoli was absolutely banging as well. So what a goal. Good work, Boulay. Elsewhere in Serie A, the last one we wanted to talk about, I think, I'm going forwards in time. That's not going to help. Should we talk about Juve Lecce? Let's do Juve. What have we got to say about Juve, Adam?
Well, I don't know if there's a lot to say about them, but it's just I kind of just wanted to talk about the comments of Allegri and how he's starting to wind up a lot of not just the teammates, but his general supporter base as well. But the story is coming out. Obviously, Chiesa has basically leaked that. It's not come directly from Chiesa, but it's been leaked that essentially Chiesa's not happy with Allegri and he's been deployed at the moment. Shock horror, everyone. Playing at right wing back probably has had a toll on him all season long. But Vlahovic is another one as well. So, gutted. Gutted for him, aren't we? But he managed to put one against Lecce, which probably isn't saying much. Do Juve, I think if we look at the record, 1 win in the last 8. I mean, it's not pretty.
They're not coming into this top 4 battle in inspiring form. They're really not looking like they're going to be they're still third on 63 points. They've got a 3-point cushion between them and Inter. They've got a 5-point cushion between them and Atalanta. But if we look at Juve's fixtures, so they've got They've got the Atalanta game this weekend. Then they've got Sevilla in the Europa League. Now, that's going to be a hell of you can't rest players there. That is taxing. Then they've got Cremonese at home, Empoli away, then Milan at home, Udinese away. So a lot of those games you would think should be winnable. But then you look at the games and the teams they've not beaten recently. So they drew against Bologna. They lost to Sassuolo. They only just beat Verona. A lot of the teams that you'd expect them to beat, they're not beating. So it doesn't seem like any of those games are going to be a given. And I think all of this noise around Juventus at the minute, again, with Allegri. Now, I think it was from the Italian football podcast, with Carlo Gagliese. Yeah, they were saying that, they were alluding to the fact that it was a player who went to Milan, then came back to Juve, but all the Juve players now fucking hate him and he hasn't played a single minute, that maybe he is leaking all of this information. Now, United fans, Arsenal fans, we will tell you that when there's a leak in the changing room, that usually means it's the last days really for the manager. And when there's a leak so obvious. But look, Juve need money, right? Juve are going to need money. And if suitors know that Chiesa and Vlahovic are not happy,
available,
there's going to be a queue around the corner. Now, I did see today, and this will really piss off Juve fans, and particularly Carlo Gagliese, if he listens, I saw Aston Villa linked to Vlahovic today, which would be absolutely brilliant. Now, I think it's not necessarily a terrible move for Dusan, I'll be honest. I think, Emery, Villa definitely going to push next year.
Yes, of course they are.
I think it could be a really big move for him. I think just to see Serie A fans' reactions if Aston Villa buy
Can you
Vlahovic,
imagine
I
that?
really want to see it just for the scenes on Twitter. But you can already see that these, like, even if these aren't genuine links, it's their agents putting the names out, right? It's agents going. So I think both of them could leave. Chiesa, I would pay anything for that guy. Honestly, I would be on the phone straight away saying, Juve, just give us a price, because that guy on the wing at Arsenal, oh my days, I would honestly die.
That?
It would be incredible. So I think there's going to be plenty of clubs after those two players. But for Juve, it is dark times, right? Because they know that next year, the punishment, they've only kicked the can down the road. It's still coming, if you know what I mean. But for the immediate future, it just doesn't seem like a happy camp, does it? And Allegri hasn't really been able to turn this around. Do you expect them to get either Europa League and qualify that way? Or do you think they'll qualify through the league? Or do you think they'll miss out?
I think the only way they can do it is Europa, personally, because on the form in the league, I don't really feel that they will do enough. But also, I think the other element is UEFA are going to kick in and say, we're going to kick you out, because it's about the second case as well. That's the huge one that has real big potential issues for them going forward, because if they're being found to have illegally, somehow weaved themselves away from paying wages, then that has huge consequences in terms of not just their league status, but potentially being run as a company. They could be folded if they wanted to. They could throw the book at them, basically. So this is huge issues for Juventus. Unfortunately, it's caused by systemic kind of abuses by the previous directors who knew what they were doing. But going forward, it doesn't look too pretty. So potentially this summer looks like a chance for them to potentially just start doing some wholesale changes, selling players or getting rid of players like Paredes, etc., on high wages. And probably you've got a nice crop of youngsters that just need a few experienced heads amongst them and a coach that can play football. That's all we can say.
A coach that actually wants to play football, not just bore people to death, would be nice at Juve, I suppose, because it's not been particularly fun. And as you said, a win against Lecce doesn't prove anything. Really, Lecce, we've been singing their praises about how hard they've been to beat this season, but they are definitely hitting bad form at the wrong time. They really are struggling at the moment. But we're going to leave Serie A there for now, I think. I think that's everything we've kind of covered, and just quickly sweeping through elsewhere. Atalanta beat Spezia 3-2. That's a big one. As you said, puts them in European contention. Lazio beating Sassuolo 2-0. And Empoli beating Bologna 3-1 tonight, which basically means that they're safe. Torino beat Sampdoria 2-0. I'm sorry, Sampdoria. Have fun in Serie B. We will be there. We will see you. But we're going to take a very quick break, guys. Very quick, I promise. And we are going to preview this week's Premier League and Serie A action right after this break.
My name is Massimo Morales, and you are listening to Anglo-Italian podcast.
It's the final part, guys. We promise it's the final part, and we're here to preview Premier League and Serie A action. We're going to start with the Premier League preview, I think. Let's do Premier League preview, and it all starts on Saturday. Of course it does, with a big, huge relegation battle in one of the first of the 3 o'clock kickoffs as Bournemouth take on Chelsea. Bournemouth in incredible form. They've now won 4 of their last 5 games. Chelsea, on the other hand, won none of their last 5 games. I think Bournemouth get a fairly convincing win here that basically means they're safe. What do you think?
Yeah, I could easily see this happening, to be fair. I think Bournemouth, on the form that they've been displaying versus a Chelsea side that lack any ideas, lack any structure, as we alluded at the beginning of this show, I think it's going to be very easy for Gary O'Neill, who's done a fantastic job. Has to be credited, because I don't think a lot of people, including ourselves, really fancy them to stay up based on how they performed at the early stages of this season anyway. So fair play.
Scott Parker didn't even fancy
let's
it.
mention him. Yeah, he didn't fancy it after that 9-0 drubbing. But yes, less said about that. But yeah, fair play to them. They've done them magnificently to be that high up the table. I didn't expect them to be that high up. But yeah, maybe that's just the levels of Chelsea right now. They've just fallen off a cliff as well. So yes, easy win.
At the same time, on Saturday, we have Leeds United visiting Manchester City. Of course, this is Big Sam's first game in charge. Now, look, we need some prime Barclays here. We need the football gods to intervene. And we need a shithouse win for Leeds here. I know it's not going to happen. I know it's the hope that kills you. But I'm just going to predict it. Leeds win. I'm going to say 2-1. I'm not going to say City don't score. That's ridiculous. So 2-1 Leeds. Adam, how do you see this one going?
I'm just waiting. I've got my memes ready. We've got the horny Sam Allardyce one, or we've got Sam Allardyce dancing to Rihanna. So one of those two is going to be used. That's all I'm going to break it to our listenership. It could be one of those being utilized this weekend. So keep an eye. But yeah, I could easily see a draw. I think there could be a draw on the cards.
I'd absolutely bite your hand off of that, honestly. Good. Next on the Saturday, we have a Midlands derby as Wolves take on Aston Villa. Now, Wolves, it looked like they were doing really well. Then all of a sudden they weren't. They got slapped around a little bit. And Villa absolutely flying. They did lose their last game to Manchester United 1-0. Very closely contested game. I feel like Villa could have got more out of that. I'm expecting a Villa win here at the Molineux. How do you see it going, Adam?
Well, I'm just having a look at the head-to-heads as well, because I think that gives you a good indicator of how these two play. It's pretty much stacked in favour of Wolves on the head-to-heads against these two, but there's been a lot of draws in this. I feel a draw is probably where I'm going with. Lopetegui, as you say, has managed to get a tune-up of this squad up until recently. But I feel they've got enough quality in this team. So I'm going to stick my head and say 1-1 draw against Unai Emery's resurgent Villa, who probably don't want to hear that because I think they're wanting 3 points here.
They are still pushing for something. Continuing the Saturday, we have Tottenham hosting Roy Hodgson's free-scoring Crystal Palace. This could be an interesting one again. Another team that looks completely lost, but at home, maybe they'll be a little bit better. They did manage to come back from 2-0 down against United at home. Maybe they can get that win that the Spurs fans so desperately crave, but I think Palace aren't going to make it easy. The late kickoff on Saturday is Liverpool taking on Brentford. Liverpool now won 5 in a row. It's kind of going under the radar that they're actually quietly getting shit done. I'm really liking this Trent Alexander-Arnold midfield thing. I'm really enjoying it. I think it's good. He's doing well. It looks like Liverpool could have a positive end to the season. Maybe nothing more than Europa League, I think. But do you see Brentford getting something here?
I could see Brentford getting something here. I think the problem will be is just, like you say, the form of Liverpool right now, how they seem to be really strong at home. If this was the away game, i.e. this was at Brentford's stadium, I think Brentford stand a better chance. But being that it's at Liverpool, I can see this being a 2-1 win for Liverpool, unfortunately.
Very nice. And then moving on to the Sunday, we have moving on to the Sunday.
Yes,
Jesus
it
Christ.
is Sunday, yeah.
Oh God. We go back to the scene of the crime where it all fell apart last year. The point in the All or Nothing series where I just stopped watching is this one. I just, this is nice. And then it ended. We go back to St. James's Park. Obviously, a good win against Chelsea. It was made very, very, very easy for us. This game is not going to be made easy for us. It is so key that we start off this game well, that we do not let that stadium get loud, because if it gets loud, it gets messy for us. But I do fancy us to get something here. Honestly, I'd take a draw right now. I would just, and it says a lot about Newcastle and how well they're playing and how good a job Eddie Howe's done and the quality of that squad and the attitude and atmosphere up there is all incredible. I would absolutely take a draw. How do you feel this one going?
Yeah, I can understand why you're kind of reserved in terms of your assumptions for this match. But I would say, and this is something we didn't mention when we were talking about the Chelsea matches, how Arteta was brave to change the personnel, in particular Partey for Jorginho and Kivor in place of Holding. Kivor proving that he's matured since that time that he's had under Arteta. I feel like he demonstrates real good potential for Arsenal going forward. So I expect this to be quite an interesting game, certainly from that point of view. I think this could be a draw. Personally, I think there's going to be a draw written over this. Potentially a goal-scoring one, though. So 1-1, I'm feeling. Maybe Newcastle take an early lead, but then you bring yourself back into it within a couple of minutes, and then it goes quite tight after that.
I think this could be an absolute goal fest. I also think this could be this could end up like 3-2, 4-3, 4-4. I think there could be just goals everywhere in this one. Because I think as good as defensively as Newcastle have been of late, maybe there's been games where they have lapsed, and Arsenal have. Our problem has been defending, but we're still scoring lots of goals. Yes. So I think there could be lots of goals in this one. I'm terrified of Alexander Isak. I'm absolutely terrified of him. And Callum Wilson, to be fair. But I think you're right with Kivior. It was an easy night for him. It was a really easy night for him, but he dealt with it very, very well. And I think he has to start this weekend. He's going to be the starting centre-back, I think, because he did not put a foot wrong. So good to see. Hopefully, we just get the 3 points and run, boys, because I don't want to go there anymore. That is on at 5:30 on Sunday Central European time. The late kickoff on Sunday, only the 2 games. We have the Battle of the Uniteds. West Ham taking on Manchester. And huge for West Ham at the bottom. I think they've started to kind of pull themselves out of it a little bit. They're 4 points ahead of Forest, Everton, Forest, Leeds and Leicester, but they've lost their last 3 games. It doesn't get any easier for them. Do you think they can upset United? United have just lost to Brighton 1-0 tonight. So
yeah, I think they've got enough within them to kind of pull out a shock result here. And under the floodlights of that London stadium, who knows what they could do. They just need that bit of confidence before they go into that semi-final against AZ Alkmaar as well. I think if you look at the other fixtures they've got going forward, if they can win this, that probably eases off a bit of pressure because you look at it, they've got away to Brentford, then at home to Leeds, and then away to Leicester. So some big games going ahead, especially if they are dragged into that mix still by that point. So a win would go a huge way. I can see Moyes kind of, shutting up shop after they score an early goal through Bowen or someone like that. So
nice.
Yeah, let's hope they
Fingers crossed. Fingers crossed. Good. And on the Monday, I forgot Monday's the day off in the UK, isn't it? Because of the celebration. I was like, 4:00 on a Monday. What the hell has turned into the Coppa Italia? But no, Fulham take on Leicester City. Leicester just massively need a win. And then Brighton against Everton, that is going to be a rough one for Everton. But the big game on Monday night, I will have finished work by this point. We will be recording probably. We have Nottingham Forest taking on Southampton. We can't overestimate how massive a game that is. Now, Southampton have got some big results this year. They've not lost to Arsenal. They've beaten a lot of the top sides. But what they haven't done is beaten the teams around them. Do you think Forest will get something here? Their away form is... I know their home form is much better than their away form.
Yeah, it does feel like if you can't control Morgan Gibbs-White, that seems to be their kind of impetus at the moment. So obviously we know about Brennan Johnson, but he's been a bit hot and cold of late as well. So I suspect Steve Cooper's going to make sure that they take advantage in this game. Southampton's huge ask. They have to turn out the form books and make sure that they're on top of it. They've got the personnel, don't get us wrong, but I suspect Nottingham Forest will do enough at home. So I'm suspecting a 1-0 win. Maybe just a penalty is enough to keep them to at least stay off the relegation threat anyway for the time being. But yeah, again, that's a huge one for them because I think if I remember rightly, a few weeks ago, we talked about their fixture list. I think they're away to Liverpool at some point as well in that mix. So they're away to Chelsea as well. So actually, it's Southampton this week. Then they've got Chelsea away the following Saturday. Then they're at home to you guys, Rory, Arsenal. And then last day of the season away to Crystal Palace. So huge,
that's
huge games.
rough run of form for the Tricky Trees, unfortunately. But we're going to leave the Premier League there because that's all the Premier League has to offer this weekend.
Yes.
And we're going to go, I think that's enough. We're going to go for Serie A. Adam, I went to hit the button. There you go. I've done it. Take us through the Serie A preview.
I'm going to just briefly go through it because I'm conscious of time, but we have got a fantastic schedule on Saturday. Start off at 2 p.m. Central European time. So we've got Milan taking on Lazio. As we alluded to, Milan needing to get a result. Lazio not in great form of late. Rory, we talked about it earlier, but how do you expect this game to go?
I think this is going to be... I'm going to back Milan to win. I think Lazio are wobbling a little bit. I think Milan... I think there was a pattern in their fixtures that it was like draw, win, draw, win. So I think it's draw. So it's time for a win. So I know I'm gonna back Milan to win this. I think they just sneak it against the Lazio that's starting to struggle.
Yeah, I agree on that one. Meanwhile, the city rivals Roma host Inter Milan at 5 p.m. on Saturday. As we alluded to, Inter in great form. Roma with Jose Mourinho and his mic. You never know what they might record. Will they record a win here, Rory?
Very good. No, I think they could. Like Mourinho against his old opposition is always going to try and pull something off, but they've not won in 3, Roma. So they lost to Atalanta, drew against Milan, and then drew against Monza. Like a disappointing run of form. I think Inter can get the job done here. Fresh off a 6-0 win, I expect them to roll on and keep the good times rolling straight into that derby.
Yes. And the last game on Saturday, I didn't potentially think about actually calling this out, but it's a relegation battle. So we've got Cremonese at home to Spezia. Big game for both sides. Spezia more so. They'll need a win, but where they're going to get this win, I don't know. Maybe Onzolo on the score sheet potentially, but they'll need a big performance at the back as well. We'll move on to Sunday. We've got the big game taking place at 11:30 Central European time, and that is Atalanta taking on Juventus. As we alluded to, Atalanta in great form of late, pushing themselves, but Juventus likewise needing to make sure that they confirm a win to maintain their top 4 finish. In the other game, as we alluded to,
just very quickly, sorry, Juve-Atalanta was a 3-3 draw last time. Yes. So this game was an absolute barnstormer last time. They've drawn their last 2 meetings as well. Juve haven't beaten them since April 2021. So Atalanta's record against Juve recently has been pretty impressive. They won in Juventus last season as well. So, yes, could be a tricky one. Not a good time for Juve to be running into Atalanta.
No, definitely not. But as I was going to talk about, the champions of Italy, Napoli, at home against Fiorentina on that 5 p.m. Central European time. And then the late kickoff on Sunday is Lecce taking on Hellas Verona. Another relegation battle there, Rory. Probably not a game for the neutral, but Rory, we know this could be a fascinating game. 2 different contrasting teams on that farmer's pitch. How do you expect it to go?
Well, Verona won 2-0 last time this game, so they did have the upper hand in Verona. As we said, Lecce's form of late hasn't been as impressive, so they did manage to beat Udinese, but that's their 1 win in the last, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. 1 win in 10 games. This is absolutely huge, this game. But Verona off a 6-0 defeat. Like, that's going to take a bit of a recovery. Yeah. I'm going to say this one ends in a draw. I'm going to say a 0-0 because I think neither of these teams massively can put goals away. I'm just looking at Lecce's scoring record is atrocious.
Yeah, they're going to need a Basharito special or Strafezza potentially to help them out here. Just to quickly go through the other games. So Torino take on Monza on Sunday at 2 p.m. as well. And then we move on to Monday. So we have Empoli taking on Salernitana at 5:30. Again, at 5:30, we have Udinese taking on already relegated Sampdoria. And then the late kickoff in Serie A, Sassuolo taking on Bologna. Not much to play for there, unfortunately, for both sides. But good football potentially for those.
I still think that could be a really I think that could be a really fun game. I think that would be a fun game because it's just vibes. Shackles are off. Let's see who can win. Right? And Bologna could do frigging anything. They just lost 3-1 to Empoli, and they've been beating teams handedly this year. So you never know what you're going to get. But guys, we are going to leave it there this week.
Yes.
I think we've done everything. There's been so much football to cover. Honestly, every night I was like, we need to talk about this on the pod. We need to talk about this on the pod. We need to talk about this on the pod. It got a bit ridiculous. But we aren't going to leave you there. I've lost the Mourinho quote, so I'm just going to say thank you for joining us. As always, please follow us on Twitter at Italian Anglo Pod, on Instagram at Anglo-Italian Pod. And if you're on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button. Tell a friend. Adam, anything to say before we go? It's only the second time I've missed a quote this season, guys. Let me know.
I've got the quote. I've got the quote. So I will sign out the viewers and the listeners to this quote. So the magnificent Jose Mourinho says, "I am not stupid. I had to protect myself. Everything is recorded." For now, take care, everyone. Ciao, ciao.